Okay, so here's something that's a little bit strange, and I just kind of want to talk about this for a second. So I saw this clip, and the clip is about it's the Indian guy from Breaking Points, and he's wearing this like Indian garb, and he's sitting here talking about, oh, the whole society has changed now that the affirmative action ruling has changed. Um, and after I saw this clip, here's the first thing that I thought. I wonder if people are hoping when in their minds, when they're like, okay, so now that affirmative action's gone, let's make college admissions fair for the first time. Because, like, in their minds, they truly believe that there are all of these black students specifically who are like taking the spots of these eligible Asian students. Now, how can you put this? Like, man, it's actually not that complicated, but let's just say everything were fair. Then in that case, like if let's say like Harvard, Princeton, all of the Ivy League schools, the reason that they become great is because they select the best people. And I feel like there's a whole bunch of different things that make people the best. But like let's like cuz there's only so many departments, right? So like let's just give an example of three departments here: history, English, and math. Three different departments. So we're not even going to include like any of the hard sciences here. Those are three real departments that like really exist on like this particular college campus. Okay, so like let's say that we have all of the students among the US, right? Right? Okay, so now we're just going off of like raw test scores. So SAT, maybe what is it, ACT, and GPA. So then every single student from across the United States, right? We take away the people here. So there's no college essays anymore. There's just raw scores. So wherever your score is, let's say you have to have over, I don't know what the numbers are now, like a 800 or something on the SAT. I can't even, I don't know what the numbers are anymore. But like, let's say everybody who has over like a 700 on the SAT and they have over like a 3.6 GPA, they are now eligible, right? And for Harvard, because like this is supposed to be the one that's like the most competitive. So every single person in the United States who applies is now in this like pool. So there's going to be like probably like everybody wants to go to Harvard, right? So now there's no more humans. We have taken out the humans from this equation, and all of the people who just meet those metrics are now going to be in this pool of people, which is going to be like hundreds of thousands of people who want to get into the school. And we made it blind at this point. So all we know is are your basic test scores. If you're over the bar of like you're smart enough to get into the school, that's all we know. We don't know your race. We don't know if your gender. We don't know your name. Nothing. Like you're just assigned a number and all your scores. So now, what percentage of the people who like want to go do you think will actually meet that metric? Like a 3.6 GPA is actually pretty high, but you have to put some things in context. First of all, getting a 3.6 GPA at an underfunded school in Detroit is not the same thing as getting a 3.6 GPA at a very well funded private school in Palo Alto, which is also not the same thing as getting a 3.6 GPA at Phillips Exeter. So, like, if we just use like raw numbers here, like all of those things don't mean the same thing. So, how do we differentiate those students if we're just talking about raw numbers? Because in terms of numbers, everybody, like maybe let's say there's 10 spots. There's way more than 10, but just for like kind of a general statistics sort of purpose, let's say there's 10 spots at Harvard each year. And all the students from those three schools who meet that bar, they're all applying, and there's 30 of them. So there's 10 from that Detroit school, there's 10 from the Palo Alto school, there's 10 from Phillips Exeter. So now how do you decide who goes? Because all the students now have met the bar. So affirmative action would basically say like, okay, we probably should take like some of the students from that Detroit school just because those students are black and disadvantaged and like they like need the spot. But we already, okay, so let's say now we've taken away affirmative action. Okay, so now that's gone, but we still have 30 kids who are all technically qualified. But just because like we understand society and we kind of understand classism and privilege, we know for shizzle that the Phillips Exeter students are more prepared than everybody because they have more money, because they have more access, because they have more privilege. I know the students in Detroit probably worked really hard. They probably overcome a lot of obstacles in life. But unfortunately, they did not receive the care package of money that would enable them to prep for a Harvard type of place since they were born, and the kids at Phillips Exeter did. Now, the kids from the Palo Alto High School are kind of in the middle here, right? Because, like, they've had more privilege than the kids in, say, in Baltimore, but they didn't have as much privilege as the kids from Phillips Exeter. So who gets the spot? Now, the reason that race is important here is because, like, where you start matters. And if you didn't know this, let me explain something to you. A lot of the kids who end up living in Palo Alto and are middle class are Asian. Do you know why that is? Let me tell you. Because their parents immigrated here, and then they valued education like most of them do. And then they became doctors and lawyers, and they became part of the middle class. And the most that they could afford was like Palo Alto. They bought zip codes that were segregated from those students in Baltimore. And they did that on purpose so that their kids could get a better education, so that their kids could have a better chance at getting into Harvard. They made those strategic decisions for a reason. But obviously, like, all of them did that. This is why you see like an entire community of basically Asian people who are saying, we fucking hate affirmative action. This is hurting us. They all claim to say that their test scores are all higher, but when you think about it in raw percentages, if 100% of Asian students all have the exact same GPA, they're all really smart, they all have over a 3.6, they all do the exact same activities, they're like literally the same person on paper, like literally, then I'm sorry, like Harvard does not need a campus of 100% Asian students, all from Palo Alto High School. Like, that actually wouldn't make for the best campus. It would no longer be Harvard. It would be like China. Do you see how that doesn't make any sense? Like, even if it was like he was saying it in this way where he was trying to like point to the fact that, oh, like, we work harder, therefore like we should all get the spots. And it's just not taking into account that actually, like, they're not working hard. They're all working with the same pre-packaged, like, privilege that they could afford without failing to realize, first of all, that they're not even all the best. Because, like, the Phillips Exeter students are really smart. They're really smart, too. Like, it isn't just the Asian kids in Palo Alto. I know, like, society and propaganda would like you to believe that, but I know from firsthand, from having worked with many of them, they're really fucking smart. And there's not really a race to them. Like, they're not all white, they're not all black, they're not all Asian. There's like a combination of them. And they're really smart. And they are not the like public Palo Alto kids in Mountain View and Berkeley and all the other really upper class suburban neighborhoods that, you know, are like well funded and the education is good. It's not the same as like there's a lot of schools like Phillips Exeter. There's Spence. We talked about this in that video I made about like Kerry Washington went to Spence. All those schools on that list are those types of schools, those kids, those IB students. And also we have to take into account that like IB or International Baccalaureate is an international program that prepares students from all over the world. They're all following the same curriculum. So there's students in Colombia, students in Africa, students in China, like all over the world who are getting like a really, really expensive education that translates to basically like you're probably going to be over prepared to go to Harvard. It isn't just Phillips Exeter, but there's a lot of schools very similar like to that. And those schools provide a better, I would say, education than the students at Palo Alto High, which is why even though a 3.6 at Palo Alto High means something, and you might be technically like smarter than a 3.6 at Baltimore High, you're not the smartest. You don't have the most well-rounded like package or lived experience, and also just in terms of like raw diversity, there's no field like there's a ton of majors on all of the college campuses, and society is large. Some of the students from like the Asian community will go on to be great and they'll go to Harvard, but it can't be all of them. It won't be a good school anymore. It just won't. And that's an unpopular opinion, but it's also real. Like you've seen the real world. Like I posted this on my community channel, but like I'm very serious when I say that. Like when I go to the hospital, I want a black female doctor. I do. I want one that understands my lived experience and one who could just like talk to me. Like I don't want a Chinese doctor, not because I'd hate Chinese people, just because like I think the Chinese doctor should go serve the Chinese community, and I don't think that that's being racist. Like, I really don't care if, like, Yao Ming studied 100 million hours and got A's in class. Like, I don't want that person as my doctor or my lawyer or my therapist. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. Like, representation is important. It just is. Like, if I'm here and I worked really hard to get to wherever the fuck I am, like in all the services that I consume in this community and in the society, I want there to be someone who looks like me. Because in my lived experience, I understand how important representation is. And maybe you don't understand that. And I feel like maybe the Asian community doesn't understand that either. They just simply think that they can just come here and all of a sudden we're all supposed to be like, they're the best, when like they're actually not the best. It's like, and also the thing is like, man, you know how like there's like statistics and there's like mean, median, mode. The mean is kind of important. Like, so like the reason that we have like politics and a justice system in America is because like in this country, at least, we actually do care about like the middle class people. Like the middle class people are kind of the bread and butter of the country. If you get rid of the middle class people, the country has nothing. If you get rid of the middle class at this point, we should all just go back to our originating countries. Like all the Europeans should go back to France, Germany, Switzerland. All the black people should go back to Africa, which they are. Like, and like I don't know what else there is. Like you have to have a middle class that like works for everyone, or else the country kind of breaks. Not even kind of. The country actually breaks. So I don't know. All of it is just very fascinating to me. And then the other thing I think is like really interesting is like a lot of people believe that their wealth that maybe they built through like technology or medicine, science, entrepreneurship, like wherever they built their money, like I understand it's a lot. But there's just a lot of different groups of people in America who have money. They just don't all look one way. So at all times, you have to be like hyper aware of like multiculturalism in America. You don't have to do that in like, Shenzhen. You don't have to do it in Ethiopia. You don't have to do it in Germany, right? Like in those places, in England, or I mean, you could, but like you don't have to, right? But America is honestly a melting pot. It truly is. Like that was like the point of it. So if you take that away, you actually don't have anything. And I think we have to start being a little bit more aware of that. Like multiculturalism and a diversity of income in terms of social class Um, it's so critical in this country. And I think that is something that's really hard for people to maybe like understand. It's not really like a foreign concept to me, but I guess I'm starting to realize as I get older how foreign of a concept it is to a lot of other people.